Jennifer Turner is director of the Wilson Center's China Environment Forum, and Ruth Greenspan Bell is a public policy fellow with the Wilson Center's Environmental Change and Security Program. They join us to talk about China's recent announcement of a cap and trade program. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Let's first talk about what the program will actually do, because we've been talking about cap and trade for so many years that we all feel like we know what it is, and I'm not so sure that's the case. At least I'm sure in my case I might need a briefing. So Ruth, can you tell us what is fundamentally a cap and trade program?
Cap and trade program is where you allow the market to do a lot of the work for you. So there are some companies that are in compliance or doing even better than compliance, and there are others that aren't doing as well, and they can trade those units essentially.
So units based around greenhouse emissions.
Yes.
Gas emissions. So that's what you're capping.
Yeah.
Or it could be other pollutants as well. You could do SO2, and
Yeah.
so that. But each companies are issued permits, and in theory, the system, if it works like the states, would every couple of years would become more stringent. So everyone has to get better. So the companies that are not good today, in a few years they will eventually be able to close down.
Passes.
Yeah,
but so then within that context, within that continuum of getting better, if company A is going to pollute a little more, it can buy.
Yes.
What are credits? Is that
Credits
what they're called? From company B.
Essentially.
Exactly.
Yeah. So when will it be implemented in China? What is the timeline?
Well, they've already been doing 7 pilot projects for the last couple of years in China on CO2 cap and trade, and it's more about a little bit of trial and error right now. We were talking beforehand that it's not that none of these are fully successful yet, but the Chinese seem very committed to wanting to learn and to master this market mechanism for controlling pollution. But it's just one of many other strategies that the Chinese government has been attempting and encouraging in the country to lower not only CO2 but just in general pollution from coal, PM 2.5.
Ruth, does this put China into a leadership position? Now, have they taken the lead in a way that is a challenge to other countries?
I think that's a really interesting question. I think one of the most important things about what China is doing, both in the agreement with about a year ago with the United States and this most recent set of announcements, is that it is actually affirmatively acknowledging its responsibility and its intention to engage and reduce its greenhouse gas emissions. Now, having said that, it's a very long process to do that. For every economy, I hate to use cliches, but you think about ocean liners and trying to turn ocean liners around. You have a momentum here, you have a certain set of expectations and processes underway in society, and they're trying to turn those around. As Jennifer says, this is not the only thing they're doing. They're doing a lot of things besides the cap and trade, and the cap and trade is still very much in the experimental stage.
Do I detect some doubt in there that they can succeed at this?
I have a few concerns about it. My basic question is this: China has been extremely successful at turning its economy around. When I first traveled there in 1986, there were very few cars on the road. Today, they're choking, choking with cars. Cities are hugely built up. The way they build buildings has changed. Everything has changed in China. And they did that not using shock therapy or anything like that. They used their own indigenous methods to do that, and they called it feeling their way across the river stone by stone. I think China should look a little bit more to its own traditions to see what can work. We're talking about a time frame here. Climate change doesn't have a pause button for the science while humans kind of get their act together. And I think if we're really going to be serious about this, each of the countries that is serious about controlling their greenhouse gas emissions should look a little bit more to their own governance traditions to see what might work to get this going.
Jennifer, what are your thoughts on this? And I don't want to simplify this by suggesting optimism, pessimism as the camps that we're in, but do you have similar concerns?
Well, I mean, there are concerns in a cap and trade system that you need transparency. You have to know what are the emissions. And that kind of information can often be sensitive. That said, in the last couple of years, there's been a big push and a lot of pressure from the central government for just PM 2.5 emissions in China. They want to lower it down because they've had all this smog. And there's been real-time monitoring. Local government officials are being told, you're out of here if you can't reach the target. Still 80% of the cities haven't reached the target. But overall, China has dropped PM 2.5 by 16%, using, as you kind of said, their traditional ways, right? Little bit of the top-down pressure. But at the same time, China still is the fastest at putting renewable energy online, wind and solar. And they've had a big push for energy efficiency, but there's still so much to be done. And I feel that the cap and trade, that one of the reasons that they're putting that tool on the table now is it's another way to put pressure on the industries themselves that, all right, you need more renewables, more energy efficiency, because for us to stop polluting, they're going to have to adopt more. So they're trying to push the market for that as well.
The industries within China, or
Within
does this
China.
have global implications?
Well, it's the industries within China, but that said, I mean, China is one of the largest recipients of foreign direct investment. So it will have dare I say, a ripple effect on companies that are investing in China as well. But I think most international companies will be quite happy if they know that their supply chain is becoming cleaner and greener. But that said, the prices could go up.
Ruth, you and I have had ongoing discussions about whether or not momentum is building towards some tipping point on climate change action. How does this affect that momentum?
Well, again, I think the fact that China is engaging and has made commitments is really incredibly important. There was a standoff for a very long time in parts of the United States where people said, well, we can't act until China acts, and people in China were no doubt saying, we can't act unless the U.S. acts.
You first.
We seem to have gotten beyond that. We have a lot more work to do, but that's a major, major step.
How will we know if it's working? At what point will there be any indicators that tell us this is more than a rhetorical flourish or
Well,
PR?
China has made some commitments. Look, there's a kind of a trajectory there from emissions that have been going on for quite a long time. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to get to a place where they stop increasing that and have a ceiling and start moving it down again. As I said earlier, it's a huge society, and moving it around is complicated. So I think we will start to see signs of progress. Look, Jennifer's already pointed out that they've made huge progress on other pollutants, and I think that's because the Chinese know that their populations want clean air to breathe. They know that they can import safer food. They can't import individual air. So the air has to be cleaned up. This is part of that process, and that is one of the reasons why I actually genuinely think the Chinese will make some progress on this.
Jennifer, a final thought on the big picture. Cap and trade is part of it, but your China Environment Forum doesn't just look at one thing. So the big picture of environmental concerns in China, how does this fit into that larger scenario?
Well, I think that, as Ruth was just saying, the air pollution is heavy on everyone's mind right now, and that the climate, CO2, it's linked, right? It's a co-benefit. As they're addressing their air pollution, it also benefits global climate change problems, right? And the pressure, the clock is ticking. The government declared a war on pollution, and the Chinese public is like, all right, when are we going to win? So this is it's a new battle zone where we're duking it out now, thinking about cap and trade. But they're I think they're going to consider carbon taxes.
And public sentiment is strongly with this.
Public
initiative.
sentiment. The Chinese public is not happy with the quality of their air, and even the businesses in China are seeing that it's hurting the economy, but that they're hearing this loud and clear. And so I think but what's also encouraging, besides the climate agreement with the United States, the fact that there's even more, I think, cooperation with U.S. organizations. The NGOs have always been there, but now the gov to gov, and it's something that's also quite encouraging.
The necessity is the mother of invention in this case. Well, thank you for joining us. And it's not a story that is over anytime soon, so we can discuss it some more as things progress. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.